Welcome to today's episode of Prehistoric Survival Stories, where we dive deep into humanity's most dangerous chapter. Picture this. You're standing in a vast, frozen landscape 40,000 years ago. The ground trembles beneath your feet as a woolly mammoth, standing 12 feet tall and weighing 8 tons, charges directly toward you. Its massive curved tusks, each stretching 15 feet long, could easily impale a modern car. Behind you, the bone-chilling roar of a cave lion echoes through the night, a predator 25% larger than any lion alive today, with no mane but deadly precision. This wasn't a scene from a movie. This was Tuesday for our ancestors. But here's the mind-bending reality. Despite being outmatched in every conceivable way smaller, weaker, slower, with no natural weapons, early humans didn't just survive this gauntlet of prehistoric giants. They thrived. They hunted creatures that could crush them with a single step. They outsmarted predators that had evolved specifically to kill. They turned the world's most dangerous animals into tools, food, shelter, and even art. How is this possible? How did our ancestors, armed with nothing but stone tools and raw intelligence, not only survive but completely dominate an Earth ruled by monsters? The answer will revolutionize how you think about human ingenuity, survival, and our place in the natural world. Because what our ancestors accomplished wasn't just survival, it was the most audacious conquest in the history of life on Earth. Chapter 1. When Giants Ruled the Earth. The year is 50,000 BCE. You emerge from your cave into a world that would make today's African safari look like a petting zoo. The morning mist parts to reveal a landscape populated by creatures so massive, so dangerous, that they seem pulled from mythology rather than natural history. In the distance, a herd of Irish elk grazes peacefully until you realize these elk stand 6 feet at the shoulder, with antlers spanning 12 feet across. A single male's antlers weigh as much as a full-grown person. Nearby, a ground sloth the size of a modern elephant tears leaves from trees with claws longer than your forearm. This isn't the cute, slow-moving sloth we know today. This is Megalonyx, a 3-ton giant that could rear up on its hind legs to tower 12 feet above you. But the herbivores were just the opening act. Moving through the shadows comes Audacious, the giant short-faced bear. Standing on its hind legs, this apex predator reached heights of over 14 feet tall enough to peer into a second-story window. With a vertical reach that dwarfed every other carnivorous mammal in North America, these bears weren't lumbering giants. Their long, muscular legs were built for speed, capable of running down prey across open terrain like a massive, furry missile. The Pleistocene epoch, spanning from 2.6 million to 11,700 years ago, was the age of megafauna. These giants weren't anomalies, they were the norm. Scientists estimate that 80% of all mammals, weighing over 1,000 kilograms, lived during this period. North America alone hosted a cast of creatures that would make Game of Thrones dragons seem reasonable. Woolly mammoths with tusks that curved in perfect spirals, mastodons with straighter tusks designed for forest combat, and cave lions that hunted in coordinated prides across Ice Age steppes. But perhaps most terrifying were the pack hunters. Dire wolves roamed in groups of 30 or more, each individual larger and more powerful than today's gray wolves. Their massive skulls could reach 12 inches in length, housing teeth designed to crack bones and tear flesh. Archaeological evidence from the La Brie tar pits shows these wolves lived everywhere from the frozen Canadian north to the tropical wetlands of Mexico. They were the ultimate generalists, adapting to every ecosystem while maintaining their deadly efficiency. Then, there were the cats. Smilodon fatalis, the iconic saber-toothed tiger, though not actually a tiger, weighed up to 750 pounds and possessed 7-inch canine teeth that functioned like organic daggers. These weren't simple stabbing weapons. They were precision instruments engineered for a killing technique, so specific and devastating that it hadn't been seen before or since in the animal kingdom. Yet for all their size and power, these megafauna faced an unprecedented threat, a small, relatively hairless primate that had recently learned to walk upright. Early humans, by comparison, were laughably outmatched. The average Homo sapiens male weighed perhaps 150 pounds and stood just over 5 feet tall. They had no claws, no fangs, no armor. Their bite force was pathetic, their top speed embarrassing, and their strength negligible compared to the giants around them. So how did such obviously inferior creatures not just survive, but systematically conquer every ecosystem on Earth? The answer lies not in what early humans lacked, but in what they possessed that no other creature in Earth's history had ever developed. The ability to think strategically across time and space, to cooperate in ways that transcended simple pack behavior, and to transform their environment through technology. But understanding their methods requires us to see the world through their eyes, to appreciate not just the physical challenges they faced, but the psychological terror of living in a world where nearly everything was actively trying to kill you. Because in the end, the story of early human survival isn't just about hunting techniques or tool use. It is about the birth of human consciousness itself, forged in the crucible of constant mortal danger. The stage was set for the ultimate underdog story. But as we'll discover, our ancestors weren't underdogs for long. Chapter 2. Masters of Fire. In the depths of Wonderwork Cave, South Africa, archaeologists have uncovered what may be humanity's oldest superpower. Scattered throughout sediment layers dating back 1 million years, microscopic traces of burned bone and ash tell a story that changed everything. Early humans had learned to control fire. Picture the moment when one of our ancestors first grasped a burning branch from a lightning-struck tree and carried it back to camp. That single act, seemingly simple, almost mundane, represented a cognitive leap that separated humans from every other species on Earth. For the first time, a creature had harnessed the force of nature, bending it to their will. But fire wasn't just light in the darkness. It was a revolutionary technology that transformed early humans from prey into predators, from scavengers into hunters, from victims into victors. The night belonged to the giants. After sunset, when vision failed and cold crept in, megafauna ruled absolutely. Cave lions prowled in coordinated groups, their pale eyes reflecting starlight as they stalked prey. Giant short-faced bears emerged from their dens, using their incredible height advantage to spot movement across vast distances. Dire wolves called to each other in haunting choruses that sent every other creature scrambling for shelter. Early humans were naturally day-shift animals. Their vision, while excellent for detail work, couldn't compete with the specialized night vision of nocturnal predators. Their hearing, though acute, couldn't match the radar-like capabilities of animals that had evolved for darkness. Without fire, sunset meant cowering in caves, hoping the darkness would pass without incident. Fire changed that equation completely. The controlled flame extended the human day by hours, creating islands of light and warmth in the hostile darkness. But more importantly, it transformed humans into psychological predators. Every other animal on Earth had an instinctual fear of fire. It meant danger, destruction, the approach of death. When early humans carried torches, they weren't just illuminating their path. They were wielding terror itself. Archaeological evidence from sites across Africa and Asia shows how systematically our ancestors exploited this psychological weapon. At Gesher Banat Yaakov in Israel, 790,000-year-old remains show continuous fire use over 100,000 years. This wasn't opportunistic scavenging from natural blazes. This was deliberate, controlled, and strategic fire management spanning millennia. The physical applications of fire were equally revolutionary. Cooking didn't just make food taste better. It fundamentally altered human biology. Cooked meat and plant foods delivered 12 to 35% more calories than raw alternatives, while proteins became 45 to 78% more digestible. This caloric windfall freed up energy for brain development, allowing human cranial capacity to expand dramatically during the Pleistocene. But cooking was just the beginning. Fire enabled tool-making techniques that were impossible without controlled heat. Wooden spear points could be hardened in flames, creating weapons with penetrating power approaching modern designs. Fire could hollow out wooden handles, straighten bent wood, and create the complex hafting systems that transformed simple stone points into sophisticated hunting implements. The psychological impact on megafauna was devastating. Consider the terror a mammoth must have experienced encountering a group of early humans at night, their torches creating dancing shadows and the acrid smell of smoke warning of approaching danger. Fire disrupted every hunting strategy megafauna had evolved. Cave bears, accustomed to using darkness as cover, found themselves exposed and vulnerable. Dire wolves, whose pack coordination depended on stealth and surprise, couldn't approach human camps without revealing their positions. Fire also enabled the most audacious hunting strategy in human history, the coordinated night hunt. Archaeological evidence from multiple sites shows early humans deliberately hunting dangerous predators under cover of darkness, using fire both as weapon and shield. They would surround cave bear dens with torches, forcing the massive predators into confined spaces where spears could be thrust safely from beyond claw range. But perhaps most importantly, fire allowed humans to expand into previously uninhabitable territories. The harsh winters of Ice Age Europe would have been impossible to survive without controlled flames for warmth. The evidence is clear. Wherever humans spread, fire followed. By 50,000 years ago, sediment records from the East China Sea show synchronized increases in fire activity across multiple continents, indicating that Homo sapiens wasn't just using fire, they were actively reshaping entire ecosystems with it. The strategic applications were limitless. Early humans learned to create fire drives, using control burns to funnel massive herbivores toward killing grounds. They discovered that fire could clear underbrush, creating the open grasslands preferred by many prey species. They even learned to use smoke as a communication system, sending signals across vast distances to coordinate group activities. Archaeological analysis reveals another crucial development: the social implications of fire control. Hearths became gathering points, places where human groups could sit together safely while the dangerous world lurked beyond the light. These firelit sessions weren't just about warmth and cooking. They were humanity's first classrooms, where knowledge was shared, strategies planned, and complex social bonds forged. The transformation was complete. Within a few 100,000 years, humans had gone from cowering in caves to carrying the sun in their hands. Fire made them larger than their size, stronger than their muscles, faster than their legs. It was humanity's first force multiplier, the technology that turned scattered bands of vulnerable primates into the most dangerous hunters the world had ever seen. But fire was just the beginning. Our ancestors were about to develop weapons and strategies so sophisticated, so brutally effective, that they would bring down creatures hundreds of times their size. Chapter 3: The Evolution of Deadly Tools. In 2024, researchers at UC Berkeley made a discovery that revolutionized our understanding of how early humans conquered the megafauna. Deep in archaeological layers dating back 13,000 years, they found Clovis Point's razor-sharp stone tools that had puzzled scientists for decades. The mystery wasn't their craftsmanship, which was exquisite, but their purpose. How exactly did early humans use these tools to kill creatures the size of city buses? The answer, when it came, was as elegant as it was terrifying. For generations, archaeologists assumed these foot-long stone points were thrown like spears or used for close combat stabbing. But experimental testing revealed something far more sophisticated. early humans had engineered the world's first biological armor-piercing ammunition. The strategy was diabolical in its simplicity. Instead of throwing spears or engaging in dangerous close combat, hunters would brace the butt of their spears against the ground, angling the weapon upward at precise trajectories. When a charging mammoth or mastodon impaled itself on these planted pikes, the creature, its own momentum, drove the stone points deep into vital organs with force exceeding anything human strength could generate. Think about the physics involved. A charging woolly mammoth weighed 8 tons and could reach speeds of 25 miles per hour. When that mass met a properly positioned Clovis point, the impact generated kinetic energy equivalent to a modern hollow-point bullet. The carefully engineered mounting systems, using bone shafts, wooden handles, and pine pitch bindings, ensured the spear tip would function like an expanding bullet, maximizing internal damage while preventing the weapon from being pulled back out. But this was just the latest innovation in an arms race that had been escalating for nearly 2 million years. The story begins with Homo erectus around 400,000 years ago in Schmingen, Germany. Here, archaeologists discovered the world's oldest known hunting spears, 8-foot-long wooden implements carved with stone tools and fire-hardened to deadly points. These were uncrewed clubs. They were precision instruments with carefully balanced weight, distribution, and aerodynamic properties that would impress modern javelin designers. Analysis of associated butchered horse remains shows these early humans weren't just scavenging carrion. They were actively hunting large, dangerous prey with weapons that enabled them to kill from a relatively safe distance. The psychological impact was revolutionary. For the first time in Earth's history, a creature that looked helpless could strike with lethal force from beyond the reach of claws and teeth. The technology evolved rapidly. By 70,000 years ago, humans in Central Africa were crafting barbed harpoon points specifically designed to hunt giant catfish weighing up to 150 pounds, enough protein to feed 80 people for 2 days. These weren't simple pointed sticks. They were complex, multi-component weapons featuring backward-facing barbs that made escape impossible once a fish was speared. The atlatl, or spear thrower, represented another quantum leap in lethality. This deceptively simple device, essentially a lever arm fitted to the end of a spear, increased throwing velocity by up to 60% while extending effective range to over 150 feet. Suddenly, early humans could kill dangerous prey from distances that made retaliation impossible. But the true genius lay in the systematic nature of tool development. Archaeological evidence shows early humans weren't just making individual weapons, they were developing integrated weapon systems with backup plans and contingencies built in. A typical hunting party might carry throwing spears for long-range engagement, thrusting spears for medium-range combat, and hafted stone tools for close-quarters work and butchering. The psychological warfare was equally sophisticated. Many stone points were crafted not just for penetration, but for maximum visual impact. The fluted channels and elaborate flaking patterns served both functional and psychological purposes. They made tools more effective while also creating weapons that looked as dangerous as they were. Consider the terror a cave lion must have felt seeing a line of humans approaching with 8-foot spears, each tipped with gleaming stone points that caught and reflected firelight. These weren't the crude sticks and stones of popular imagination. They were engineered killing instruments that announced humanity as technological superiority. The evidence suggests early humans deliberately developed tools that compensated for their physical limitations, while maximizing their cognitive advantages. They couldn't outrun a short-faced bear, but they could engineer traps that used the bear's own size and strength against it. They couldn't overpower a saber-toothed cat, but they could craft spears that delivered lethal wounds from beyond pouncing distance. Archaeological analysis from sites like the La Brie tar pits reveals the devastating effectiveness of these weapons. Megafauna remains show clear evidence of human hunting techniques. thrust wounds from spears, cut marks from stone tools, and impact fractures consistent with systematic butchering. More tellingly, many of these kills show evidence of cooperative hunting strategies that required both sophisticated weapons and complex social coordination. The development wasn't just technological, it was systematic and cumulative. Each generation built upon the innovations of their predecessors, creating weapons that grew progressively more sophisticated and deadly. Stone points became sharper, hafting systems more reliable, and weapon designs more specialized for specific prey and hunting conditions. By the time humans encountered the megafauna of the late Pleistocene, they weren't just tool users. They were weapons engineers whose technological sophistication rivaled anything seen until the Industrial Revolution. They had created instruments of death so effective that creatures which had dominated ecosystems for millions of years found themselves suddenly, inexorably extinct. But tools were only part of the equation. The real key to human success lay in their ability to coordinate these technologies through hunting strategies so complex, so brutally efficient, that they transformed scattered individuals into the most lethal force nature had ever produced. Chapter 4. The Psychology of the Hunt. The kill site at Sauterne in Burgundy, France, tells one of the most chilling stories in archaeological history. Beneath the cliffs lie the bones of 10,000 wild horses, driven to their deaths over countless generations by early human hunters. The bone deposits are 3 feet thick and cover 2.5 acres, a monument to humanity's mastery of psychological warfare against megafauna. But this wasn't mindless slaughter. It was strategic, calculated, and devastatingly effective. Early humans had discovered something that would change the balance of power forever. They could weaponize the behavior, patterns, and psychology of the very creatures they hunted. The transformation from scavenger to apex predator required more than better tools. It demanded a complete understanding of prey behavior, pack dynamics, and the environmental factors that could be manipulated to human advantage. Our ancestors became behavioral scientists, studying their quarry with the same intensity modern researchers bring to animal psychology. Take the mammoth hunts of Ice Age Europe. These weren't random encounters or desperate struggles for survival. Archaeological evidence reveals systematic, premeditated operations that exploited every weakness in mammoth social behavior. Hunters learned that mammoths were deeply social creatures who would risk everything to protect their young. They discovered that these giants, despite their size and strength, were creatures of habit who used the same migration routes, water sources, and feeding grounds generation after generation. The human strategy was ruthless in its efficiency. Hunting parties would identify vulnerable individuals, the old, the sick, the young, and systematically separate them from the protective herd. Using fire, noise, and coordinated movement, they created chaos that disrupted the mammoth's natural defensive patterns. A panicked mammoth was a dead mammoth, because panic meant leaving the safety of the group and running into prepared killing grounds. But the psychological sophistication went much deeper. Early humans learned to exploit the sensory limitations of their prey. Many megafauna had poor color vision but excellent motion detection, so human hunters learned to move in patterns that confused these predator detection systems. They discovered that large herbivores had blind spots and used this knowledge to approach undetected from specific angles. The evidence from sites like Prehistoric in the Czech Republic reveals the staggering scale of this psychological manipulation. Here, archaeologists found evidence of coordinated hunts involving dozens of humans working together to drive hundreds of mammoths toward natural barriers where escape was impossible. The bone assemblages show clear evidence of selective targeting. Hunters consistently chose the largest, most dangerous individuals first, not because they were easier to kill, but because removing these dominant animals caused the remaining herd to collapse into chaos. This strategic thinking extended to predator management as well. Cave lions, despite their fearsome reputation, were creatures of pattern and habit. They hunted at specific times, preferred certain prey, and avoided confrontation when possible. Early humans learned these patterns and turned them into weapons. They would leave deliberately wounded prey in locations where cave lions were likely to scavenge, then attack the lions when they were focused on feeding and vulnerable. The psychological warfare against dire wolves was particularly sophisticated. These pack hunters relied on coordinated attacks that could bring down even the largest prey. But human hunters discovered that dire wolf coordination broke down under specific types of pressure. By using fire and loud noises at crucial moments, they could disrupt pack communication and turn organized attacks into chaos. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans even learned to exploit the territorial behaviors of different predator species. Cave lions and short-faced bears were fierce competitors who would attack each other's young and steal kills. Human hunters learned to manipulate these rivalries, using the presence of one species to drive away another, or timing their activities to take advantage when territorial conflicts had temporarily cleared areas of dangerous predators. But perhaps most impressively, early humans learned to think like their prey while maintaining their human perspective. They could predict when and where megafauna would appear, what they would do under different circumstances, and how to create scenarios where human advantages would be maximized while megafauna strengths became liabilities. The site at Boxgreve in England provides a perfect example. Here, 500,000-year-old horse remains show clear evidence of systematic ambush hunting. The kill sites are located at natural choke points where horses would be forced to slow down and bunch together while navigating difficult terrain. Humans didn't chase the horses to these locations. They simply waited at the spots where they knew horses would eventually appear, then struck with coordinated precision. This wasn't instinct or accident. It was strategic thinking that required modeling complex systems, predicting animal behavior across time and space, and coordinating group activities with military-like precision. Early humans had become behavioral engineers, reshaping the psychology of entire ecosystems to serve their hunting purposes. The cumulative effect was devastating for megafauna populations. Creatures that had evolved sophisticated anti-predator behaviors found themselves facing a hunter that could predict, manipulate, and counter every defense mechanism. Worse, these humans kept learning, adapting, and improving their techniques across generations in ways that simple evolutionary responses couldn't match. By the late Pleistocene, early humans weren't just hunting megafauna. They were conducting psychological warfare against entire species. They had learned to turn size into liability, strength into weakness, and the very social bonds that kept herds together into vulnerabilities to be exploited. The results speak for themselves. Wherever humans appeared, megafauna extinctions followed with mathematical precision. Not because humans were stronger or faster, but because they had learned to think more strategically than any predator in Earth's history. They had weaponized intelligence itself. Chapter 5: Pack Tactics. At Qasim Cave in Israel, archaeologists made a discovery that redefined our understanding of early human social hunting. A 400,000-year-old site where systematic cooperative hunts had taken place for tens of thousands of years. The evidence painted a picture of humans who had learned to function as a single, deadly organism more dangerous than any pack of dire wolves, more coordinated than any pride of cave lions. The transformation from scattered individuals to cooperative hunters represented an evolutionary leap that made humans the most dangerous predators Earth had ever seen. This wasn't just about working together. It was about creating emergent intelligence where the group became smarter, more capable, and infinitely more lethal than any individual member. Consider the scale of coordination required to successfully hunt a woolly mammoth. These creatures stood 12 feet tall, weighed 8 tons, and could trample a human without slowing down. Their thick hide could deflect most weapons. Their massive size made them nearly impossible to bring down quickly, and their intelligence meant they learned from attacks and adapted their defenses. Yet archaeological evidence shows early humans routinely hunted mammoths in operations involving dozens of participants, complex logistics, and precise timing that would challenge modern military units. The Dolní Věstonice site in the Czech Republic preserves evidence of mammoth hunts so sophisticated they involved multiple specialized roles: scouts who tracked herds across vast distances, engineers who prepared kill sites and escape routes, weapons specialists who crafted and maintained the tools, tacticians who coordinated the actual attack, and processing teams who butchered the massive carcasses. The hunting strategy itself was a masterpiece of cooperative tactics. Rather than direct confrontation, human groups developed techniques that used their numbers and intelligence to overcome megafauna advantages. They learned to attack in coordinated waves, with each hunter playing a specific role in bringing down creatures hundreds of times their individual size. A typical mammoth hunt began days before the actual kill. Scout teams would locate herds and study their behavior patterns, identifying vulnerable individuals and optimal attack locations. Engineering teams would modify the terrain, digging pit traps, building funnel systems from stones and branches, and preparing escape routes that allowed hunters to retreat safely after striking. The attack itself was precisely choreographed. Initial teams would use fire and coordinated movement to separate target animals from the protective herd. As the isolated mammoth moved through prepared terrain, hunters would emerge from concealment in carefully timed waves. Early attackers would deliver disabling wounds to the legs and trunk, while follow-up teams targeted vital areas with longer spears once the creature was immobilized. But the cooperation extended far beyond the moment of killing. Mammoth processing required massive logistical operations involving entire communities. A single mammoth provided up to 2,000 pounds of meat, thousands of pounds of fat for fuel and tool-making, bones for construction and weapons, hide for clothing and shelter, and ivory for tools and art. Managing these resources required complex social systems for sharing, preservation, and distribution. The archaeological evidence suggests these hunting operations were ad hoc arrangements. They were institutionalized systems passed down across generations and refined over millennia. Sites like Prehistoric show evidence of mammoth hunting spanning thousands of years, with each generation building upon the knowledge and techniques of their predecessors. The social implications were revolutionary. Successful megafauna hunting required levels of trust, communication, and coordination that went far beyond anything seen in other social species. Hunters had to be willing to risk their lives for group success, knowing that individual safety depended on collective effectiveness. They needed communication systems sophisticated enough to coordinate complex operations across large areas and extended timeframes. Analysis of brain evolution during this period suggests the cognitive demands of cooperative hunting drove the development of uniquely human social intelligence. The ability to model not just animal behavior, but human behavior to predict what other humans would do, coordinate complex group activities, and maintain long-term cooperative relationships appears to have been crucial for hunting success. The evidence from sites like Schningen shows how this social hunting technology spread and evolved. Different human groups developed specialized techniques, adapted to local megafauna and environmental conditions, but the underlying principles remain consistent. Use intelligence and cooperation to overcome individual physical limitations. Coordinate group activities to maximize collective effectiveness and maintain social systems that enabled knowledge transfer across generations. The impact on megafauna was catastrophic. Creatures that had evolved to deal with individual predators found themselves facing coordinated attacks that exploited every weakness while minimizing human vulnerabilities. Pack-hunting carnivores like direwolves operated on instinct and simple coordination. Human hunters operated with strategic planning that could adapt in real time to changing conditions. Archaeological evidence from the late Pleistocene shows the devastating effectiveness of human pack tactics. Megafauna populations crashed wherever humans appeared, not because of environmental changes or disease, but because they faced predators that could outthink, outplan, and outcoordinate any defense mechanism evolution had provided. The Genuinous extinction in Australia provides a perfect case study. These giant flightless birds had dominated Australian ecosystems for millions of years, but human arrival around 50,000 years ago led to their extinction within a few thousand years. The evidence suggests systematic hunting using coordinated fire drives that exploited Genuinous nesting behavior and flight limitations. By the end of the Pleistocene, humans had perfected cooperative hunting to such a degree that they could reliably bring down any creature on Earth. They had become the ultimate pack predators, not through individual strength or speed, but through collective intelligence that turned groups of vulnerable primates into unstoppable hunting machines. The social revolution was complete. Humans had learned to function as superorganisms whose collective capabilities far exceeded the sum of their individual parts. This wasn't just about hunting. It was about the birth of human civilization itself, forged in the crucible of life or death cooperation against the most dangerous prey imaginable. Chapter 6. Mastering the Persistence Hunt. In the Kalahari Desert, Kung hunters can run down a kudu antelope, an animal that can reach speeds of 40 miles per hour, using nothing but endurance and strategic thinking. The hunt can last 8 hours and cover 25 miles, but it ends the same way every time, with a 150-pound human standing over a 400-pound antelope that has literally run itself to death. This ancient technique, known as persistence hunting, may have been humanity's secret weapon against the megafauna of the Pleistocene. Archaeological evidence suggests our ancestors used their unique physiological advantages to turn the size and speed of giant prey animals into fatal weaknesses. The human body seems poorly designed for predation. We're slow, weak, and vulnerable compared to the creatures we hunted. But evolution had given early humans one crucial advantage. We are the finest endurance runners in the animal kingdom. Our unique combination of efficient cooling, energy storage, and biomechanical adaptations meant we could run for hours, while other animals could only sprint for minutes. Consider the physiological evidence. Humans are among the few mammals that cool primarily through sweating rather than panting. This allows us to maintain high activity levels, even in hot weather, when most large animals must seek shade and rest. Our long legs and specialized tendons store and release energy with each stride, making distance running surprisingly efficient. Most importantly, our large brains can override the pain and fatigue signals that force other animals to stop and rest. Archaeological analysis suggests early humans weaponized these advantages against megafauna. The technique was devastatingly simple. Track a large herbivore during the hottest part of the day. Keep it moving by preventing rest, and follow relentlessly until the creature's cooling system failed and it collapsed from heat exhaustion. The evidence from sites like Boxgrove shows this wasn't theoretical, it was standard practice. Horse remains dating back 500,000 years show clear signs of persistence hunting. The animals had been run to exhaustion before being killed, as evidenced by stress fractures in leg bones and damage patterns consistent with collapse rather than combat. But persistence hunting required more than just physical endurance. It demanded tracking skills so sophisticated that modern forensic investigators would be impressed. Human hunters learned to read tracks that told entire stories, whether an animal was injured, how long ago it had passed, its emotional state, whether it was traveling alone or with a group. They could follow these stories across miles of terrain, maintaining pursuit even when the trail seemed to disappear completely. The psychological component was equally crucial. Persistence hunting worked because it created sustained terror in prey animals. Being followed relentlessly by bipedal predators triggered panic responses that made efficient escape impossible. Animals that might have easily outrun human hunters in a straight sprint found themselves making poor decisions, expending energy inefficiently, and gradually exhausting themselves through fear-driven behavior. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans refined these techniques specifically for megafauna hunting. The Tong site in South Africa preserves evidence of systematic persistence hunting of large antelopes around 2.5 million years ago. But more intriguingly, sites across Africa and Asia show evidence of similar techniques being used against much larger prey. Mammoth kill sites often show evidence that these giants had been stressed and exhausted before being killed. Rather than direct confrontation, human hunters appear to have used persistence techniques to weaken their prey first. A mammoth might be followed for days, prevented from feeding properly, kept moving during rest periods until its massive body became a liability rather than an advantage. The technique was particularly effective against creatures like giant ground sloths. These 3-ton herbivores were too slow for traditional pursuit hunting, but their enormous size made them incredibly vulnerable to overheating. Human hunters learned to keep them moving during hot weather, using their superior endurance to literally cook these giants from the inside out. Analysis of cave bear remains suggests humans use persistence techniques even against dangerous predators. Rather than direct confrontation in caves, hunters would force bears out of their dens and keep them moving until exhaustion made them vulnerable to spear attacks. The evidence shows clear patterns. Bears killed by humans often show signs of extreme stress and exhaustion rather than battle wounds. But perhaps most importantly, persistence hunting allowed humans to safely kill dangerous prey. By exhausting their targets first, hunters could approach creatures like cave lions or short-faced bears when they were too tired to fight effectively. This dramatically reduced the risk of injury or death during the final confrontation. The social aspects were equally sophisticated. Persistence hunting required rotating teams of runners who could maintain pursuit even when individual hunters became exhausted. Archaeological evidence suggests hunting groups developed complex relay systems where fresh hunters would take over pursuit from tired ones, maintaining constant pressure on prey while allowing human hunters to recover. The technique also required advanced planning and environmental knowledge. Successful persistence hunts depended on knowing terrain, water sources, and weather patterns. Hunters needed to predict where exhausted animals would try to rest or drink, positioning themselves to prevent recovery and maintain psychological pressure. The cumulative effect was devastating for megafauna. Creatures that had evolved to escape predators through speed or size found themselves facing hunters who could pursue them literally to death. There was no hiding from humans, no outrunning them, no intimidating them into backing down. Once marked for hunting, megafauna were as good as dead. It was simply a matter of time and distance. Archaeological records from the late Pleistocene show the global spread of persistence hunting techniques. From African plains to European forests to Asian steppes, the evidence shows humans using endurance, running to bring down the largest and most dangerous animals in every ecosystem they entered. By 40,000 years ago, humans had perfected persistence, hunting to such a degree that size had become a disadvantage rather than an advantage for prey animals. The larger the creature, the more quickly it overheated and exhausted itself trying to escape human pursuit. Megafauna found themselves in an evolutionary trap. The very adaptations that made them successful became fatal weaknesses when facing human hunters. The revolution was complete. Humans had learned to turn time itself into a weapon, transforming their apparent weaknesses into the ultimate hunting advantage. Chapter 7. The Cave Wars. Deep in the limestone caves of Europe, a 29,000-year-old crime scene tells one of the most dramatic stories of human survival. Embedded in the vertebra of a massive cave bear lies a triangular piece of flint, the broken tip of a human spear. This tiny fragment, discovered by University of Tübingen paleobiologist Suzanne Munzel, represents hard evidence of humanity's most dangerous gambit, fighting giants for the caves that meant survival through Ice Age winters. The conflict was inevitable. Caves weren't just convenient shelters. They were the difference between life and death during the brutal cold periods that dominated Ice Age Europe. But humans weren't the only species that understood this. Cave bears, weighing up to 1,500 pounds and standing 8 feet tall, had claimed Europe's best cave systems as their exclusive hibernation sites for over 100,000 years. These weren't the relatively docile brown bears we know today. Cave bears were specialized giants with massive heads, powerful shoulders, and forearms built for digging and combat. Males could weigh 50% more than the largest modern grizzlies, and their skulls alone measured nearly 2 feet in length. They had evolved specifically for cave living, developing social hierarchies and territorial behaviors that made them formidable opponents for any creature foolish enough to challenge their dominance. Archaeological evidence from caves across Europe reveals the systematic nature of human cave conquest. At Chauvet Cave in France, the floor is covered with 150 cave bear skeletons alongside clear evidence of human occupation. But this wasn't peaceful coexistence. Analysis shows deliberate human placement of cave bear skulls as territorial markers, suggesting these early humans weren't just living in the caves, but actively claiming dominance over their former inhabitants. The hunting evidence is equally compelling. Cut marks on cave bear skulls and leg bones show these giants were being systematically skinned and butchered by human hunters. Many of the bones belonged to cubs, suggesting humans were targeting the most vulnerable members of bear families, a brutally efficient strategy that eliminated future generations while minimizing combat risk. But the cave wars were one-sided affairs. Cave bears had evolved sophisticated defensive strategies over millennia. They would position guards at cave entrances during hibernation periods, create barrier systems using rocks and debris, and coordinate group defenses when threatened. Archaeological evidence suggests some caves changed hands multiple times, with bears reclaiming sites after temporary human occupation. The human response was typically ingenious. Rather than direct confrontation with fully active bears, hunters learned to attack during hibernation when the giants were sluggish and disoriented. They developed specialized techniques for cave warfare, using fire to create smoke that would force bears from their dens, employing coordinated spear attacks in the confined spaces where bear size became a disadvantage, and timing assaults during the deepest parts of winter when bears were most vulnerable. Analysis of cave bear remains from sites like Régordu in southern France reveals the sophistication of human cave warfare tactics. A rectangular pit contained the remains of at least 20 bears, covered by a massive stone slab. This wasn't natural death. It was evidence of systematic extermination, possibly using pit traps designed specifically for cave bear hunting. But the conflict extended beyond simple competition for shelter. Cave bears and humans were competing for the same ecological niche: intelligent, adaptable omnivores who could exploit a wide range of resources. Both species used tools, modified their environments, and developed complex social behaviors. The competition was between two different approaches to survival, and only one could dominate Europe's cave systems. The evidence suggests humans developed psychological warfare tactics specifically for cave bears. They learned that bears were creatures of habit who returned to the same hibernation sites year after year. By leaving human scent markers, tool caches, and fire remnants in bear caves, humans could claim territories even when not physically present. Bears would arrive at traditional hibernation sites to find them contaminated with human presence, forcing them to seek less optimal shelter. Archaeological analysis from Basura Cave in Italy reveals even more sophisticated tactics. Human occupants created clay pellets and arranged them around cave formations in patterns that appear designed to confuse and disorient bears. This wasn't random activity. It was environmental manipulation designed to make caves psychologically uncomfortable for their original inhabitants. The timeline of cave conquest is revealing. As human populations increased during the late Pleistocene, archaeological evidence shows corresponding decreases in cave bear populations across Europe. Not because of climate change or food scarcity, but because humans were systematically claiming the cave systems bears needed for survival. The strategic implications were enormous. Control of caves meant humans could survive the harsh Ice Age winters that killed exposed populations. It provided secure bases for tool-making, food storage, and social gatherings that were essential for cultural development. Most importantly, it gave humans year-round territorial control rather than seasonal nomadic patterns. Cave lions faced similar pressure, though their response was different. As predominantly nocturnal hunters, they were less dependent on specific cave sites for survival. However, evidence from sites across Europe shows humans actively hunting cave lions that ventured too close to claimed cave systems. Lion remains show cut marks, consistent with skinning and butchering, suggesting these predators were being eliminated not just for safety, but for their valuable pelts. The psychological impact on remaining megafauna was profound. Caves had been refuges where large animals could shelter safely from weather and other predators. When humans claimed these sites, they eliminated crucial survival resources from entire ecosystems. Creatures that had relied on cave shelter during extreme weather were forced into exposed positions where they were vulnerable to both environmental stress and human hunting. By 25,000 years ago, the cave wars were essentially over. Archaeological evidence shows human occupation of prime cave sites across Europe, with corresponding collapses in cave bear populations. The giants that had dominated European cave systems for over 100,000 years had been systematically eliminated by creatures 1/10 their size. But this wasn't just about shelter. It was about establishing dominance over entire landscapes. By controlling the caves, humans had claimed the most valuable real estate in Ice Age Europe. They had turned the harsh environment from an enemy into an ally, using the very conditions that made survival difficult for other species to consolidate their own territorial control. The cave wars represented a crucial turning point in human evolution. For the first time, our ancestors weren't just adapting to their environment, they were actively reshaping it, claiming territories from incumbent species, and establishing the territorial dominance that would characterize human expansion across the globe. Chapter 8. The Sabertooth Encounters. In the frozen permafrost of Siberia, Russian scientists recently made a discovery that sent shockwaves through the paleontological community. A perfectly preserved saber-toothed cat kitten, its fur still intact, its features so well preserved that it looked as though it had died yesterday rather than 35,000 years ago. This tiny predator, no larger than a house cat, represented one of the most dangerous species early humans ever encountered. The adult version of this kitten, Homotherium latidens, the scimitar-toothed cat, was a killing machine that had perfected predation over 20 million years of evolution. With 7-inch serrated fangs designed for slicing through thick hide and massive neck muscles that could deliver bone-crushing bites, these cats were the ultimate expression of predatory evolution. But they weren't alone. The Americas hosted an even more terrifying species, Smilodon fatalis, the iconic saber-toothed tiger that weighed up to 750 pounds and possessed canine teeth so large they protruded below the jawline even when the mouth was closed. These weren't just big cats. They were specialized killing machines that had evolved hunting techniques unlike anything seen before or since. Archaeological evidence suggests early humans encountered multiple species of saber-toothed cats across 3 continents. And incredibly, humans not only survived these encounters, but systematically hunted these apex predators. The evidence of this predator versus predator warfare is written in the fossil record in ways that redefine our understanding of early human capabilities. The challenge saber-toothed cats presented was unique in human experience. Unlike other megafauna that rely primarily on size or strength, saber-toothed cats were engineered for killing. Their massive canine teeth weren't just weapons. They were precision instruments designed to deliver fatal wounds with surgical accuracy. Smilodon's hunting technique involved using those 7-inch fangs to slash open the throats or bellies of prey, creating wounds that would cause rapid death through blood loss. But perhaps more terrifying was their intelligence. Saber-toothed cats were ambush predators with sophisticated stalking behaviors that could adapt to different prey types and hunting conditions. They could plan attacks, coordinate group hunts. Evidence suggests some species were social and learned from failed attempts. Facing them required more than just better weapons. It demanded thinking some of the smartest predators ever to exist. The archaeological evidence of human saber-tooth encounters comes from sites across North and South America, where both human artifacts and saber-tooth remains are found together. At Rancho La Brea in California, the famous tar pits have preserved over 2,000 Smilodon fossils alongside clear evidence of human presence. But the most compelling evidence comes from kill sites where saber-toothed cats show clear signs of human hunting. Analysis of Smilodon remains from multiple sites reveals cut marks from stone tools, impact fractures from spear points, and butchering patterns that match other human prey species. This wasn't scavenging from natural deaths. These were deliberate hunts targeting some of the most dangerous predators in North America. The human hunting strategy against saber-toothed cats was necessarily different from techniques used against herbivorous megafauna. These predators couldn't be driven into panic or exhausted through persistence hunting. They were ambush specialists whose natural behavior was to remain hidden until the moment of attack. Hunting them required turning their own predatory instincts against them. Archaeological evidence suggests humans learned to exploit saber-tooth feeding behavior. Like modern big cats, saber-tooth species would drag kills to secluded locations for extended feeding sessions. During these periods, when the cats were focused on eating and their mobility was limited by the carcass, human hunting parties could approach an attack with coordinated spear strikes. The evidence from sites like Frisenhan Cave in Texas reveals another hunting strategy. Here, archaeologists found remains of very young Homotherium alongside many adults, but notably few intermediate ages. This pattern suggests humans were targeting denning sites where adult cats were protecting. Cubs a dangerous but effective strategy that eliminated entire family groups while they were concentrated in defendable locations. But perhaps most remarkably, evidence suggests humans weren't just hunting saber-toothed cats for food or safety. They were hunting them for their symbolic value. Saber-tooth remains from human sites often show evidence of careful skin removal with claws left intact, suggesting the pelts were being preserved as trophies or status symbols. This wasn't subsistence hunting, it was conquest. The psychological impact of successfully hunting saber-toothed cats cannot be overstated. These were the apex predators of their ecosystems, creatures that had dominated food chains for millions of years. When humans began systematically hunting them, it sent a clear message to every other species. If humans could kill the ultimate killers, nothing was safe. Analysis of saber-tooth extinction patterns reveals the devastating effectiveness of human hunting pressure. Unlike other megafauna extinctions that occurred gradually over millennia, saber-tooth species disappeared rapidly once humans appeared in their territories. Smilodon fatalis, which had dominated North American ecosystems for over 1 million years, went extinct within a few thousand years of intensive human contact. The evidence suggests humans developed specialized techniques for different saber-tooth species. Homotherium, with its more cursorial, running adaptations, was apparently hunted using persistence techniques combined with ambush tactics. Smilodon, which was more heavily built and less mobile, was hunted using coordinated spear attacks that exploited its limited agility. But the most intriguing evidence comes from cave paintings and carved artifacts that show detailed knowledge of saber-tooth anatomy and behavior. Human artists depicted these cats with remarkable accuracy, showing not just their distinctive teeth, but their hunting postures, social behaviors, and even sexual dimorphism. This wasn't casual observation. It was detailed intelligence gathering by hunters who needed to understand every aspect of their prey as behavior. The extinction of saber-tooth cats marked a crucial turning point in human evolution. For the first time, our ancestors had successfully eliminated predators that were specifically adapted to hunt large mammals, including potentially humans themselves. By removing these apex predators from ecosystems, humans had fundamentally altered the balance of nature in their favor. The psychological transformation was equally important. Humans who could successfully hunt saber-tooth cats had conquered their deepest evolutionary fears. These predators represented everything that had threatened human ancestors for millions of years: stealth, power, killing expertise, and predatory intelligence. By systematically hunting them to extinction, early humans had declared themselves the ultimate predators on Earth. Chapter 9. Giants of the ice standing before the massive skeleton of a Colombian mammoth in a modern museum. It's almost impossible to comprehend the audacity of our ancestors. This creature stood 14 feet tall at the shoulder and weighed 10 tons, as much as 4 modern elephants combined. Its tusks stretched 16 feet and weighed over 200 pounds each, capable of impaling a modern car. Yet archaeological evidence from across 3 continents shows early humans not only hunted these giants, but did so with systematic efficiency that drove multiple mammoth species to extinction. The Mammoth Wars represent perhaps the most ambitious hunting campaigns in human history. These weren't desperate struggles for survival. They were calculated military operations that required sophisticated planning, coordinated execution, and technological innovation that wouldn't be matched until the development of modern warfare. Consider the scale of the challenge. A single mammoth contained enough meat to feed a human band for months, but killing one required overcoming a creature with thick hide that could deflect most weapons, crushing strength that could flatten humans with a casual step, and intelligence sophisticated enough to use tools and coordinate group defenses. Mammoths lived in matriarchal herds that protected their young with coordinated charges, used their tusks as both weapons and tools, and had memory systems that allowed them to avoid dangerous areas and recognize threats. Yet at sites like Kastinki in Russia, archaeologists have uncovered evidence of mammoth hunting operations so extensive they resembled ancient factories. Bone accumulations represent hundreds of individual mammoths processed over thousands of years. The logistics alone, tracking herds, coordinating hunting parties, processing massive carcasses, and distributing resources required organizational systems that approached early governmental complexity. The hunting technology humans developed specifically for mammoth warfare was revolutionary. The recently discovered Clovis point mounting systems represent engineering sophistication that rivals modern weapons design. These weren't simple spear points. They were complex mechanical systems designed to penetrate mammoth hide and then expand inside the wound, creating internal damage that would be fatal even if the initial strike didn't immediately bring down the giant. Archaeological analysis of mammoth kill sites reveals the systematic nature of human hunting strategies. At the Blackwater Draw site in New Mexico, mammoth remains show evidence of coordinated attacks involving multiple hunters working in precisely choreographed sequences. Initial strikes targeted the legs to immobilize the giant, followed by coordinated attacks on vital areas once the mammoth was unable to flee or fight effectively. But the most remarkable evidence comes from sites like Lenner in Arizona, where archaeologists found mammoth remains alongside sophisticated tool caches that had been prepared specifically for mammoth processing. These included specialized butchering tools, bone-cracking implements for accessing marrow, and evidence of systematic resource extraction that left nothing to waste. A single mammoth was transformed into meat for food, fat for fuel and waterproofing, bones for tools and construction, hide for clothing and shelter, and ivory for weapons and art. The strategic implications of successful mammoth hunting were enormous. These giants weren't just food sources. They were mogul resource deposits that could supply human bands with everything needed for survival. A successful mammoth hunt could provide sufficient resources to support a human group through an entire winter, enabling population growth and territorial expansion that wouldn't have been possible through smaller prey hunting alone. Analysis of mammoth extinction patterns reveals the devastating effectiveness of human hunting pressure. The Columbian mammoth, which had thrived across North America for over 1 million years, disappeared within a few thousand years of human arrival on the continent. The timing is too precise to be coincidental. Wherever humans appeared, mammoth populations crashed with mathematical predictability. But mammoths weren't passive victims. Evidence from multiple sites shows these giants developed anti-human behaviors that hadn't existed before human contact. Mammoth herds began avoiding traditional migration routes where human ambushes occurred, changed their feeding patterns to minimize exposure to hunting parties, and developed coordinated defensive behaviors specifically designed to counter human tactics. The human response was typically adaptive. When mammoths began avoiding traditional hunting grounds, humans developed mobile hunting strategies that could track herds across vast distances. When mammoths coordinated group defenses, humans developed techniques for breaking up herds and isolating individual targets. The archaeological record shows a continuous arms race between human innovation and mammoth adaptation, with humans consistently staying one step ahead. The evidence from Wrangel Island provides a haunting epilogue to the Mammoth Wars. This isolated Arctic island hosted the last mammoth population on Earth, dwarf mammoths that survived until just 4,000 years ago, long after their mainland cousins had been driven to extinction. These final mammoths were smaller, less dangerous, and lived in isolation from human contact. Yet even they eventually disappeared, possibly when human explorers finally reached their island refuge. The psychological impact of mammoth hunting on human development cannot be overstated. Successfully bringing down creatures of such enormous size and power required levels of cooperation, planning, and courage that pushed human social evolution to new levels. The shared experience of mammoth hunting forged social bonds that enabled larger group formations and more complex cultural systems. Archaeological evidence suggests mammoth hunting also drove technological innovation beyond weapons and tools. Sites across Europe show evidence of mammoth bone architecture structures, built from the bones of hunted giants that provided shelter capable of lasting through multiple winter seasons. At Mazyrik in Ukraine, archaeologists uncovered dwellings constructed entirely from mammoth bones, representing some of the earliest examples of monumental architecture in human history. The symbolic importance of mammoth hunting is evident in Ice Age art from across Europe and Asia. Cave paintings depict mammoth hunts with remarkable accuracy, showing not just the animals, but the human hunting techniques used to bring them down. Carved ivory figurines and decorated weapons suggest mammoths held special cultural significance beyond their practical value. They were symbols of human mastery over the natural world. By 10,000 years ago, the Mammoth Wars were essentially over. The giants that had dominated northern ecosystems for millions of years had been systematically eliminated by creatures 1,000th their size. The victory was complete. Humans had proven they could hunt and kill the largest land mammals that had ever existed. But this triumph came with costs that are still being calculated today. The loss of mammoth ecosystems triggered cascading environmental changes that altered entire continents. Grasslands that had been maintained by mammoth grazing converted to forests. Permafrost patterns changed without mammoth trampling, and nutrient cycles collapsed without mammoth migrations. Humans had won the mammoth wars, but in doing so, they had fundamentally altered the planet they inherited. Chapter 10. The final hunt. Between 50,000 and 10,000 years ago, something unprecedented happened on Earth. Across 3 continents, the giants began to disappear. Not gradually, through slow evolutionary processes, but rapidly, systematically, with mathematical precision that points to a single cause: the arrival of modern humans. The late Pleistocene extinction event, as scientists term it, represents the most dramatic loss of large animal life in Earth's 4.5 billion year history. Within a geological instant, 80% of all mammals weighing over 1,000 kilograms vanished forever. Woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, cave lions, dire wolves, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, Irish elk, and dozens of other megafauna species that had dominated ecosystems for millions of years simply ceased to exist. The timing tells the story. In Australia, megafauna extinctions began around 50,000 years ago, precisely when humans first arrived on the continent. In North America, giants disappeared around 13,000 years ago, coinciding with human expansion across the continent. In Europe and Asia, where humans had coexisted with megafauna longer, extinctions occurred more gradually but followed the same pattern. Wherever human populations increased, megafauna populations crashed. Archaeological evidence from hundreds of sites across the globe reveals the systematic nature of human hunting pressure. At Cuddy Springs in Australia, the bones of diprotodon giant wombat-like creatures, weighing 3 tons, show clear-cut marks from human tools. In South America, ground sloth remains from caves across the Andes bear evidence of human butchering. From Siberian mammoth graveyards to African elephant kill sites, the story is the same. Humans weren't just occasionally hunting megafauna, they were systematically exterminating them. But this wasn't mindless overkill. Analysis of human settlement. Patterns during the late Pleistocene show sophisticated resource management strategies that maximized extraction from megafauna populations while minimizing hunting risk. Early humans had learned to target specific age and sex classes that would cause maximum population disruption, to time hunts for optimal resource extraction, and to coordinate hunting pressure across multiple human groups to prevent prey populations. From Recovering. The Israeli study led by Tel Aviv University provides the most compelling evidence for systematic human hunting pressure. Analyzing animal bones from dozens of prehistoric sites across the Levant, researchers found clear evidence that humans consistently targeted the largest available prey species until they became extinct, then moved to progressively smaller animals. The pattern held across 1.5 million years of human occupation. From giant elephants to giant deer to gazelles, humans always hunted the biggest animals available until none remained. The efficiency was devastating. Computer modeling of late Pleistocene ecosystems suggests human hunting pressure was so intense that megafauna populations couldn't maintain replacement levels. Species that had survived multiple climate changes, ice ages, and environmental catastrophes found themselves unable to cope with human predation pressure that specifically targeted reproductive adults and breeding populations. The evidence from Rancho La Brie provides a glimpse into the final moments of megafauna dominance. The tar pits, which had trapped animals for tens of thousands of years, show dramatic changes in species composition around 12,000 years ago. Suddenly, the remains of giant carnivores and herbivores virtually disappear, replaced by smaller species that still exist today. The transition was so rapid that it occurred within a few hundred years, too fast for climate change, but perfectly timed with human population expansion. But climate defenders argue the extinctions were caused by environmental changes at the end of the Ice Age, not human hunting. The warming climate, they suggest, altered habitats so rapidly that large animals couldn't adapt quickly enough. However, paleoclimate analysis reveals this theory has fatal flaws. Many of the extinct species had survived multiple previous climate changes that were more severe than the end Pleistocene warming. More tellingly, islands that lacked human contact retained their megafauna populations long after similar species went extinct on the mainland. The Madagascar case study is particularly revealing. This large island off the coast of Africa hosted a spectacular megafauna community, including elephant birds standing 10 feet tall, giant lemurs, and hippos. All survived multiple climate changes over millions of years. But within 1,000 years of human arrival around 2,000 years ago, every large species was extinct. The pattern was identical to mainland extinctions, but compressed into a much shorter time frame. Due to the island's smaller size, analysis of the final megafauna populations reveals the desperation of species facing extinction. Woolly mammoth populations on Wrangel Island developed dwarfism, shrinking to half their normal size in an apparent evolutionary response to limited resources and hunting pressure. Ground sloths in the Americas retreated to increasingly remote caves and high-altitude refuges. Cave bears abandoned their traditional hibernation sites in favor of deeper, less accessible caverns. None of these adaptations were sufficient. The archaeological record shows human hunters followed megafauna into their final refuges, developing specialized techniques for hunting in caves, on islands, and in mountainous terrain that had previously provided safety. The last mammoth died on a remote Arctic island. The last ground sloth was cornered in an Andes cave. The last cave bear was hunted in a German limestone cavern. The human technological response to declining megafauna populations reveals sophisticated resource management that approached industrial efficiency. As large prey became scarce, archaeological sites show evidence for more intensive processing of smaller prey, development of new hunting technologies suited to smaller animals, and increased reliance on plant resources and marine foods. The transition from big game hunting to more diverse subsistence strategies occurred simultaneously across the globe, suggesting coordinated human adaptation to self-created resource scarcity. But the most compelling evidence for human causation comes from what survived. Small animals were largely unaffected by the extinctions. Species that lived in environments unsuitable for human hunting, deep ocean, remote islands, extreme Arctic regions retained their megafauna communities. Most tellingly, Africa and Asia, where humans had evolved alongside megafauna and where animals had time to develop anti-human adaptations, suffered less severe extinctions than the Americas and Australia, where human arrival was recent and sudden. The final hunt wasn't a single event, but a global process that played out over 40,000 years as humans spread to every continent. Each new human arrival triggered the same pattern: rapid megafauna population declines, systematic hunting of the largest available species, and ultimate extinction of creatures that had dominated their ecosystems for millions of years. Stopped by 10,000 years ago, the age of giants was over. Humans had eliminated most megafauna from the planet, fundamentally altering the structure and function of every ecosystem they entered. The survivors: elephants in Africa and Asia, bison in North America, kangaroos in Australia, persisted only because they had either evolved alongside humans or lived in regions where human hunting pressure was limited by environmental factors. The implications were profound. For the first time in Earth's history, a single species had deliberately and systematically eliminated most large animals from entire continents. The planet humans inherited after the final hunt was fundamentally different from the one their ancestors had entered. It was a world emptied of giants, simplified in structure, and dominated by a single apex predator whose influence extended to every ecosystem on Earth. Chapter 11. The birth of human dominance in the span of just 40,000 years, a mere blink in evolutionary time. Humans had accomplished something unprecedented in the 4.5 billion year history of life on Earth. They had gone from scattered bands of vulnerable primates to the undisputed rulers of every ecosystem on the planet. The transformation was so complete, so revolutionary, that it created a new geological epoch, the Anthropocene, the age of human dominance. The numbers tell the story with mathematical precision. Before human expansion, Earth hosted megafauna, communities of stunning diversity. Australia had giant kangaroos, massive wombats, and predatory lizards over 20 feet long. North America was populated by ground sloths the size of elephants, saber-toothed cats with 7-inch fangs, and bears that stood 14 feet tall. Europe and Asia were home to cave lions larger than any modern cat, woolly rhinoceros with massive horns, and mammoths that dwarfed today's elephant stud by 10,000 years ago. Most of these giants were gone. In North America, 34 genera of large mammals had vanished. South America lost 50 genera. Australia lost all mammals weighing more than 100 kilograms. The extinction rate was 1,000 times higher than natural background levels, a mass extinction event comparable to the asteroid impact that killed the dinosaurs, but this time caused by a single species of primate. But the story of human dominance isn't just about what disappeared. It's about what humans became in the process of making it disappear. The cognitive, social, and technological innovations required to systematically eliminate megafauna transformed humans from just another African ape into something entirely new, a global superorganism capable of reshaping entire planets. The archaeological evidence reveals this transformation occurring simultaneously across multiple domains. Tool technology evolved from simple stone choppers to sophisticated composite weapons that could bring down creatures hundreds of times larger than their makers. Social organization expanded from small family groups to coordinated hunting societies, capable of planning and executing complex operations across vast territories. Environmental manipulation progressed from opportunistic use of natural fires to systematic landscape management that reshaped entire ecosystems. But perhaps most importantly, humans developed something no other species had ever possessed: the ability to accumulate and transfer knowledge across generations at unprecedented speed and scale. Each successful mammoth hunt generated information about behavior, anatomy, and tactics that could be shared instantly across human groups. Each tool innovation spread through populations faster than genetic evolution could adapt to counter it. Each strategic breakthrough became part of a growing arsenal that made humans increasingly unstoppable. The psychological transformation was equally profound. Humans who could successfully hunt saber-toothed cats had conquered their deepest evolutionary fears. Those who could bring down mammoths had proven their mastery over the largest land animals ever to exist. Groups that could eliminate cave bears from prime territory had demonstrated control over entire landscapes. The confidence born from these victories created a feedback loop that drove even more ambitious conquests. Archaeological analysis of human brain evolution during this period shows remarkable changes in cranial capacity and structure. The cognitive demands of megafauna hunting, tracking complex behavioral patterns, coordinating large group activities, developing and maintaining sophisticated tool technologies, appeared to have driven rapid expansion in human mental capabilities. Our ancestors weren't just better hunters than their predecessors. They were fundamentally smarter, thought the social implications were revolutionary. Successful megafauna hunting required levels of cooperation, trust, and coordination that went far beyond anything seen in other species. Human groups that could work together effectively had enormous advantages over those that couldn't. This created powerful selection pressure for social intelligence, communication skills, and the ability to maintain complex relationships across large communities. The evidence from sites like Dolní Věstonice in the Czech Republic shows how thoroughly this social revolution had transformed human society by 30,000 years ago. The archaeological record reveals communities of several hundred individuals working together in specialized roles: hunters, toolmakers, food processors, artists, and leaders. This wasn't just cooperation. It was civilization in embryonic form. But the most remarkable aspect of human dominance was its global reach. Within 40,000 years of leaving Africa, humans had reached every continent except Antarctica. They had adapted to environments ranging from tropical rainforests to Arctic tundra, from high mountains to ocean islands. In each new environment, they rapidly identified and eliminated the local megafauna, demonstrating an adaptability that exceeded every other large mammal in Earth's history. The environmental impact was staggering. Computer models of pre-human ecosystems show dramatically different landscapes dominated by mega-herbivore grazing, maintained by mega-predator hunting patterns, and structured by megafauna migration routes. The elimination of these giants triggered cascading changes that altered vegetation patterns, soil formation, nutrient cycling, and climate regulation systems across entire continents. Yet humans didn't just destroy, they created. Archaeological evidence shows sophisticated environment management beginning as early as 85,000 years ago. Humans learned to use fire not just as a tool, but as a landscape engineering system, creating the grasslands and forest mosaics that provided optimal hunting environments. They developed sustainable resource extraction techniques that could support growing populations without depleting critical resources. The transition from hunter to farmer, around 10,000 years ago, represented the final phase of human dominance over the natural world. Having eliminated most large wild animals, humans began domesticating the survivors, creating artificial ecosystems entirely under human control. Agriculture wasn't just a new subsistence strategy, it was the ultimate expression of human environmental dominance. The archaeological record shows this transformation occurring simultaneously across the globe. In the Middle East, humans domesticated wheat, barley, sheep, and goats. In Asia, they developed rice cultivation and pig domestication. In the Americas, they created maize agriculture and llama husbandry. In each case, humans were replacing wild ecosystems with artificial systems, designed to maximize human benefit. But the most profound change was psychological. Humans had gone from being one species among many to being the single most important force shaping life on Earth. They had demonstrated that intelligence, cooperation, and technology could overcome any natural limitation. The planet had become their domain. Its other inhabitants, their subjects, or resources. This transformation set the stage for everything that followed. The cognitive abilities developed during megafauna hunting enabled the development of language, art, religion, and science. The social skills learned through cooperative hunting created the foundation for cities, governments, and civilizations. The environmental manipulation techniques pioneered in pursuit of giants became the basis for agriculture, industry, and technology. By 10,000 years ago, the age of human dominance had begun. Our ancestors had proven that a single species could reshape an entire planet through intelligence and cooperation. They had eliminated their competitors, domesticated their resources, and claimed dominance over every ecosystem they entered. The world had become fundamentally human in ways that continue to shape our planet today. The transformation from prey to planetary dominance had taken just 40,000 years, an evolutionary instant that changed everything. Humans had not just survived their encounter with the giants of the past. They had used that encounter to become giants themselves. Chapter 12. The Terror Birds and Giant Lizards. While woolly mammoths and saber-toothed cats dominated the popular imagination, some of the most terrifying creatures our ancestors faced were neither mammals nor giants by weight alone. In the remote corners of Ice Age Earth lurked predators so alien, so perfectly engineered for killing, that they seemed designed by nightmares rather than evolution. Yet even these monsters fell before human ingenuity. Standing 10 feet tall and weighing 1,000 pounds, the terror birds of South America represented evolution's most successful experiment in creating the perfect killing machine. Feruzricos and its relatives possessed massive skulls housing brains dedicated entirely to predation, necks powerful enough to drive their enormous beaks through bone, and running speeds that could match a modern racehorse. These were not scavengers or opportunistic hunters. They were apex predators that had evolved specifically to kill large mammals. Archaeological evidence from sites across South America reveals the terrifying efficiency of terror bird hunting. Their beaks, measuring over 2 feet in length, functioned like biological pickaxes capable of crushing skulls with a single strike. Their powerful necks could deliver blows with enough force to shatter the spine of a horse-sized animal. Most terrifyingly, they hunted with intelligence that approached mammalian levels, using ambush tactics and coordinated attacks that made them nearly impossible to escape once they had selected their prey. Yet human sites from the same period show clear evidence of terror bird hunting. At Monte Hermoso in Argentina, archaeologists discovered terror bird remains alongside human tools and fire hearths, indicating these giants had been systematically hunted and butchered. Cut marks on the massive leg bones show humans had learned to process these creatures for food, extracting meat from animals that were specifically designed to kill creatures exactly like them. The hunting strategy humans developed for terror birds was necessarily unique. These weren't slow herbivores that could be exhausted through persistence hunting, nor were they heavily built predators whose size could be turned against them. Terror birds were fast, agile, intelligent killers that could outrun most prey and had evolved specifically to hunt mammals of human size. Fighting them required tactics that exploited their few weaknesses while maximizing human advantages. Archaeological analysis suggests humans learned to exploit terror bird territorial behavior. Like many large predators, these birds claimed and defended specific hunting territories, returning to the same areas repeatedly. Human hunters learned these patterns and used them to set elaborate traps involving pitfalls, concealed spears, and coordinated ambush that could bring down the birds before their superior speed and power could be brought to bear. But perhaps even more terrifying than the terror birds were the giant monitor lizards of Australia and Asia. Megalania, the largest terrestrial lizard ever to exist, reached lengths of over 20 feet and weighed nearly a ton. Unlike mammals, these reptilian predators possessed physiologies that made them almost indestructible. They could survive injuries that would kill any mammal, required only a fraction of the food needed by warm-blooded predators, and possessed venomous bites that could bring down prey many times their own size. The archaeological evidence of human encounters with Megalania comes primarily from Australian sites dating to the period immediately after human arrival on the continent. Rock art from sites across northern Australia depicts giant lizards being hunted by groups of humans using spears and fire, some of the earliest documentary evidence of human megafauna hunting anywhere in the world that challenged these giant lizards presented was unlike anything humans had faced elsewhere. Megalania possessed all the advantages of large size and predatory intelligence, while lacking the mammalian vulnerabilities that humans had learned to exploit. They couldn't be exhausted through persistence hunting because they're cold-blooded. Metabolism allowed them to remain active for much longer than warm-blooded animals. They couldn't be frightened by fire because reptiles lacked the instinctive fear of flames that made fire such an effective weapon against mammals. Yet humans found ways to hunt even these seemingly invulnerable predators. Analysis of Megalania. Remains from sites like Cuddy Springs shows clear evidence of human hunt techniques adapted specifically for giant reptiles. Rather than the quick kills favored for mammalian prey, human hunters developed techniques for gradually wearing down these giant lizards through repeated attacks that exploited their limited ability to regulate body temperature. The strategy was brutally patient. Human hunting parties would locate basking Megalania during the hottest parts of the day, when the giant lizards were most sluggish, and attack with coordinated spear strikes designed not to kill immediately but to inflict wounds that would prevent the lizard from thermoregulating effectively. As the creature's body temperature dropped, it would become increasingly sluggish until human hunters could approach safely for the killing strikes. But the most remarkable aspect of human adaptation to these alien predators was the speed with which effective hunting techniques developed. Terror birds had ruled South American ecosystems for over 20 million years, while Megalania had dominated Australian food chains for even longer. Yet within a few thousand years of human arrival, both groups were extinct. The archaeological timeline shows humans learning to hunt these creatures almost immediately upon first contact, suggesting cognitive flexibility that enabled rapid adaptation to entirely novel predatory challenges. The extinction of terror birds and giant lizards marked a crucial turning point in human expansion. These were the last predators on Earth that posed genuine threats to organized human groups. Their elimination meant humans no longer faced any creatures capable of consistently hunting them as prey. For the first time in evolutionary history, a single species had achieved complete freedom from predation pressure. The psychological impact cannot be overstated. Terror birds and giant lizards represented forms of predation so alien that they challenged human understanding of how predators should behave. They hunted in ways that mammalian predators did not, moved in patterns that defied mammalian logic, and possessed capabilities that seemed almost supernatural. Yet humans had learned to defeat even these monsters, proving that intelligence and cooperation could overcome any form of predation that evolution could devise. Archaeological evidence suggests the techniques developed for hunting terror birds and giant lizards influenced human expansion into other challenging environments. The patience and precision required for reptile hunting translated directly to techniques for hunting dangerous marine animals. The coordination needed for terror bird ambush provided templates for hunting other fast-moving prey species that couldn't be approached using traditional mammalian hunting strategies. The legacy of these encounters extends into human cultural development. Many of the world's oldest mythologies feature giant birds and dragon-like creatures as primordial enemies that must be defeated by heroes. These stories, passed down through thousands of generations of oral tradition, may preserve cultural memories of humanity's victory over the last predators that could consistently threaten human groups. Sites across Australia preserve rock art, depicting giant lizards in ways that suggest both fear and reverence. These weren't just documentary records of successful hunts. They were cultural celebrations of human triumph over creatures that represented the ultimate predatory challenge. The artistic sophistication of these early depictions suggests that conquering terror birds and giant lizards held special cultural significance beyond their practical value as food sources. The environmental impact of terror bird and giant lizard extinction was profound, but different from megamammal losses. These predators had occupied unique ecological niches as large, intelligent hunters that specialized in killing other large animals. Their removal left gaps in food webs that have never been filled, contributing to the simplified ecosystems that characterize post-megafauna landscapes. Computer modeling of pre-human Australian ecosystems suggests megalania played crucial roles in controlling herbivore populations and maintaining ecosystem balance. Similarly, terror birds appear to have been keystone predators whose hunting activities influenced the behavior and distribution of entire mammalian communities. The loss of these apex predators triggered cascading changes that fundamentally altered the structure of their ecosystems. Yet perhaps most significantly, the defeat of terror birds and giant lizards completed humanity's conquest of terrestrial predation. With these final challenges eliminated, humans had proven they could develop effective hunting strategies for any form of predation that terrestrial environments could produce. They had faced down the fastest runners, the strongest biters, the most intelligent hunters, the most heavily armored defenders, and the most alien predators on Earth, and defeated them all. The transformation was complete. Humans had evolved from just another prey species into the ultimate terrestrial predator, capable of hunting successfully in any environment against any opponent. The techniques developed in these final confrontations would serve human expansion into every remaining terrestrial habitat on Earth, enabling the global dominance that characterizes human presence today. Chapter 13. The Great Southern Giants. When the first humans arrived in Australia around 50,000 years ago, they stepped into an alien world populated by creatures so bizarre, they seemed designed by a committee of mad scientists. This wasn't just another continent with familiar animals scaled up to giant size. This was an ecosystem that had evolved in isolation for 40 million years, producing megafauna unlike anything found elsewhere on Earth. The Australian megafauna defied every hunting strategy humans had developed. Diprotodon, the giant wombat, weighed 3 tons, but looked nothing like the massive herbivores humans had encountered in Africa or Asia. Its barrel-shaped body, powerful claws, and heavily reinforced skull made it virtually impervious to traditional hunting techniques. Procoptodon, the giant kangaroo, stood 8 feet tall and possessed leg muscles so powerful they could disembowel a predator with a single kick. Most terrifying of all was Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion, with bolt cutters for teeth and thumbs equipped with retractable claws that could slash through flesh and bone with surgical precision. Archaeological evidence from sites like Cuddy Springs and Lake Mungo reveals the systematic nature of human conquest of Australian megafauna. Within just a few thousand years of human arrival, over 90% of Australia's large animals had vanished forever. This wasn't gradual extinction due to climate change, it was rapid, targeted elimination that followed the same pattern humans had established on other continents, but compressed into an even shorter time frame due to Australia's smaller landmass and isolated ecosystem. The challenge Australian megafauna presented was unique in human experience. These animals had evolved without mammalian predators, developing defensive strategies that had never been tested against intelligent, tool-using hunters. Many possessed anatomical features that would have been impossible in other environments. Diprotodons, backwards-facing pouch that protected young during high-speed retreats. Procoptodon's ability to travel at 30 miles per hour in 20-foot bounds. Thylacoleo's semi-retractable claws that functioned like biological switchblades. Yet humans adapted with characteristic speed and ingenuity. The rock art sites scattered across northern Australia provide the earliest direct evidence of human megafauna hunting techniques anywhere in the world. These paintings, some over 40,000 years old, show sophisticated hunting strategies specifically developed for Australian prey. Groups of humans are depicted using fire drives to funnel giant kangaroos toward killing grounds where spear-wielding hunters waited in coordinated formations. The hunting techniques humans developed for diprotodon reveal remarkable tactical sophistication. These giant wombats possess nearly impenetrable defenses, thick hide that could deflect most weapons, massive skulls that could crush attackers, and the ability to retreat into burrows where they became virtually invulnerable. Traditional hunting approaches that worked on other continents were useless against creatures designed for underground living. Archaeological analysis suggests humans learned to exploit diprotodon's burrowing behavior as a weakness rather than a strength. Kill sites show evidence of systematic burrow flooding using diverted water sources, forcing the giants to emerge where human hunting parties waited with prepared spear formations. Other sites show evidence of burrow collapse techniques using coordinated digging and leverage systems that trapped diprotodon underground, where they could be killed safely through spear strikes from above. But the most remarkable adaptation was how quickly humans learned to hunt Procoptodon. These giant kangaroos represented a form of locomotion unknown outside Australia, bipedal hopping at speeds that could outpace most predators. Their powerful legs could deliver kicks capable of killing a human instantly, while their speed made traditional persistence hunting impossible. Yet archaeological evidence shows humans routinely hunting these creatures within centuries of first contact. The solution humans developed was characteristically ingenious. They learned to use Australia's unique terrain against its unique animals. Procoptodon's hopping locomotion, while incredibly efficient on open ground, became a liability in rocky or heavily forested areas where precise landing was crucial. Human hunters learned to drive giant kangaroos into terrain that limited their mobility, using fire and coordinated movement to force them into areas where their primary defensive advantage became a fatal weakness. The evidence from Lake Mungo provides the most detailed picture of early Australian hunting techniques. Here, archaeologists found processing sites where multiple megafauna species had been systematically butchered using tools and techniques adapted specifically for Australian anatomy. Diprotodon bones show cut marks and patterns that indicate humans had learned the most efficient methods for processing 3-ton carcasses. Procoptodon remains reveal butchering techniques that safely avoided the dangerous leg bones while maximizing meat extraction. Perhaps most impressively, evidence suggests humans developed techniques for hunting Thylacoleo, the marsupial lion that was arguably Australia's most dangerous predator. These creatures combined the climbing ability of leopards with the crushing bite force of hyenas and anatomical adaptations that made them unlike any predator humans had encountered elsewhere. Their thumb claws could slash through hide and muscle, while their bolt-cutter teeth could sever spines with a single bite. Archaeological evidence from Thylacoleo kill sites shows humans learned to exploit the marsupial lion's arboreal hunting behavior. Rather than ground-based confrontations, where the lion's superior physical capabilities would dominate, humans developed techniques for attacking these predators in trees, where human tool use could be maximized, while limiting the lion's mobility advantages. Spear points found embedded in Thylacoleo bones show evidence of upward-angled attacks consistent with humans hunting these predators from below while they were positioned in trees. The speed of Australian megafauna extinction suggests humans arrived with fully developed hunting technologies and immediately applied them to local species. Unlike other continents, where archaeological evidence shows gradual development of megafauna hunting techniques over thousands of years, Australian sites show sophisticated hunting strategies appearing almost immediately upon human arrival. This indicates humans had reached a level of adaptability that enabled them to rapidly develop effective techniques for hunting entirely novel prey types. The environmental Manipulation humans employed in Australia was particularly sophisticated. Evidence from multiple sites shows systematic landscape burning designed to create the open grasslands that favored human hunting, while eliminating the dense forests that provided cover for megafauna. This wasn't random fire use. It was deliberate ecosystem engineering that converted Australian landscapes from megafauna habitat to human-dominated hunting grounds. The cultural impact of Australian megafauna hunting is preserved in Aboriginal oral traditions that may represent the world's oldest continuous cultural records of human-animal interactions. Stories passed down through over 2,000 generations describe giant animals that once dominated Australian landscapes but were defeated through human courage and ingenuity. These traditions provide cultural confirmation of archaeological evidence, while preserving specific knowledge about megafauna behavior and hunting techniques. Analysis of geniunous eggshell fragments provides direct evidence of human hunting pressure on Australia's giant birds. These eggshells show burn marks consistent with human cooking fires, indicating humans were not only hunting adult genuineness, but systematically targeting their reproductive capacity by collecting and cooking eggs. This represents one of the earliest examples of humans deliberately targeting species reproduction to accelerate extinction, technique that would be refined and applied to megafauna extinctions worldwide. The Australian conquest represents perhaps the most complete megafauna elimination achieved by early humans. Within 10,000 years of human arrival, Australia's ecosystems had been fundamentally transformed from megafauna-dominated landscapes to the modern fauna communities characterized by smaller marsupials and introduced species. The transformation was so complete that many Australian environments still show signs of ecological relaxation simplified, communities that have never recovered from the loss of their largest members. Yet the techniques humans developed for conquering Australian megafauna had implications far beyond a single continent. The adaptability demonstrated in rapidly developing hunting strategies for entirely novel prey types became a template for human expansion into other challenging environments. The landscape modification techniques pioneered in Australia were later applied to megafauna hunting on other continents, while the systematic approach to species elimination became a hallmark of human environmental impact worldwide. The Australian story demonstrates humanity's ultimate adaptability as predators. Faced with prey types that had never existed elsewhere on Earth, humans developed effective hunting strategies within decades of first contact. They proved that no form of megafauna, however unique or well-adapted, could survive contact with human intelligence and determination. The conquest of Australia's monsters was humanity's final examination as apex predators, and they passed with devastating efficiency. Chapter 14. The Aquatic Giants. The story of human dominance is usually told as a terrestrial tail mammoths on frozen plains, cave lions in European forests, giant ground sloths in American woodlands. But some of humanity's most remarkable victories occurred in environments where humans seemed hopelessly outmatched. The rivers, lakes, and coastal waters where aquatic giants ruled with absolute authority. Archaeological evidence from sites across Central Africa reveals one of the most audacious hunting campaigns in human history. The systematic pursuit of prehistoric giant catfish weighing up to 150 pounds each. These weren't the manageable freshwater fish we know today. They were genuine monsters, armored predators with crushing jaws and the bulk to overwhelm any human foolish enough to enter their domain. Yet by 70,000 years ago, humans were hunting these aquatic giants with barbed harpoons that represent some of the most sophisticated fishing technology ever developed. The giant catfish of prehistoric Africa were evolutionary marvels specifically designed for aquatic dominance. Their massive skulls house brains dedicated to detecting the slightest water disturbances, While their powerful bodies could generate enough force to stun prey through water pressure waves alone, most intimidatingly, they possess crushing jaws lined with hundreds of backwards curving teeth that made escape impossible once they had grasped their prey. But humans had learned something that would change the balance of power in aquatic environments forever. They could bring terrestrial intelligence to bear on aquatic hunting. The barbed harpoons found at sites like Blombos Cave in South Africa represent technological sophistication that wouldn't be matched until modern times. These weren't simple pointed sticks. They were complex mechanical systems designed specifically for underwater prey capture. The barb technology was revolutionary. Once a harpoon struck a giant catfish, backwards-facing points would deploy inside the fish's body, making removal impossible. The more the fish struggled, the deeper the barbs would penetrate, while attached lines allowed human hunters to maintain control from the safety of the shoreline. It was biological engineering that turned the fish's own strength against itself. Archaeological analysis reveals the devastating effectiveness of these techniques. At Katanga in the Democratic Republic of Congo, bone accumulations represent hundreds of giant catfish processed over thousands of years. The processing sites show evidence of systematic resource extraction that left nothing to waste: meat for food, scales for armor, bones for tools, and swim bladders for waterproofing materials. But the aquatic hunting revolution extended far beyond African rivers. Along the coastlines of Ice Age Europe, archaeological evidence shows humans systematically hunting marine megafauna that dwarfed their terrestrial counterparts. Whale bones from sites across northern Spain and France show clear cut marks from human tools, indicating humans were processing creatures weighing dozens of tons using techniques adapted from terrestrial megafauna hunting. The challenge marine megafauna presented was unprecedented. These weren't slow-moving herbivores that could be exhausted through persistence hunting, nor were they terrestrial predators whose behavior patterns humans had learned to exploit. Whales, massive seals, and giant sea turtles possessed intelligence, size, and environmental advantages that should have made them invulnerable to human hunting. Yet humans found ways to bring down even these oceanic giants. Archaeological evidence from sites like Impale in Denmark shows sophisticated marine hunting techniques that combine terrestrial tactics with uniquely aquatic innovations. Humans learned to exploit tidal patterns that temporarily stranded large marine animals, coordinate group hunts using boats and nets, and develop harpoon technologies that could penetrate blubber thick enough to stop traditional weapons. The boat technology alone represents a cognitive leap that enabled human expansion into entirely new predatory niches. The world's oldest known boats, dating back over 40,000 years, weren't simple transportation devices. They were hunting platforms specifically designed for pursuing aquatic megafauna. Archaeological analysis shows these early vessels incorporated features specifically adapted for marine hunting: stabilizing systems for harpoon throwing, storage areas for processing tools, and design elements that minimize noise during approach phases. But perhaps most remarkably, humans learned to hunt the giant beavers of Ice Age North America, creatures weighing over 200 pounds, with dam-building capabilities that could reshape entire river systems. These weren't just large rodents. They were ecosystem engineers whose activities influenced water flow, forest composition, and wildlife distribution across vast areas. Their dams created wetland complexes that supported diverse animal communities while providing defensive barriers that made them nearly impossible to hunt using traditional techniques. The archaeological evidence from giant beaver kill sites reveals hunting strategies that were part engineering project, part military campaign. Rather than direct attacks on heavily defended dam complexes, humans learned to exploit giant beaver behavior through systematic manipulation of their constructed environments. Kill sites show evidence of coordinated dam destruction designed to flood beavers out of their defensive positions, combined with underwater spear techniques that could kill the giants once they were forced into open water. The extinction timeline for aquatic megafauna follows the same pattern seen with terrestrial giants. Wherever humans developed effective hunting techniques, giant aquatic species disappeared rapidly and permanently. The giant beavers that had dominated North American river systems for millions of years vanished within a few thousand years of human arrival. The massive catfish that ruled African waterways disappeared from most river systems as human populations expanded. Marine megafauna populations crashed along coastlines where human maritime hunting technologies developed. The environmental impact was equally profound. Giant beavers had been keystone species whose dam-building activities maintained vast wetland ecosystems across North America. Their elimination triggered cascading environmental changes that fundamentally altered continental hydrology. River systems that had been managed by giant beaver engineering for millions of years suddenly became unmanaged, leading to dramatic changes in flow patterns, flooding cycles, and ecosystem structure that persists today. Similarly, the giant catfish of African river systems had been apex predators whose feeding activities controlled populations of smaller fish and maintained ecosystem balance. Their systematic elimination by human hunters created ecological vacuums that have never been filled, contributing to the simplified freshwater ecosystems that characterize many African rivers today. But the most significant impact was psychological. By conquering aquatic giants, humans had proven they could dominate environments where they possessed no natural advantages whatsoever. They couldn't swim as well as their prey, couldn't hold their breath as long, couldn't see as clearly underwater, and certainly couldn't match the physical power of creatures specifically adapted for aquatic life. Yet through intelligence, technology, and cooperation, they had turned every aquatic environment into hunting grounds. The techniques developed for aquatic megafauna hunting became templates for human maritime expansion. The boat technologies pioneered for hunting giant catfish enabled human colonization of oceanic islands. The harpoon systems developed for marine mammal hunting became the foundation for whaling industries that would dominate oceanic economies for thousands of years. The coordinated hunting strategies learned through aquatic giant pursuit provided organizational models for maritime societies worldwide. Archaeological evidence suggests these aquatic hunting campaigns were among the most sophisticated operations undertaken by prehistoric humans. They required technological innovation, environmental knowledge, and social coordination that exceeded anything needed for terrestrial hunting. Success demanded understanding of tidal patterns, weather systems, animal behavior, and aquatic ecology. That took generations to develop and perfect. Yet humans mastered these challenges with characteristic determination and ingenuity. Within a few thousand years of developing effective aquatic hunting technologies, they had eliminated most large aquatic animals from accessible water bodies worldwide. The age of aquatic giants was over, replaced by human-dominated water systems that continue to characterize Earth's freshwater and marine environments today. The conquest of aquatic megafauna completed humanity's transition to global apex predator status. Having proven they can hunt successfully in terrestrial, arboreal, cave, and aquatic environments, humans had demonstrated predatory capabilities that exceeded any species in Earth's history. They had become the ultimate generalist predators, capable of adapting their hunting techniques to any environment and any prey type that evolution could produce. As we reach the end of this extraordinary story, pause for a moment and consider what our ancestors truly accomplished. 40,000 years ago, small bands of humans faced a world populated by creatures so dangerous, so massive, that they seem pulled from mythology rather than natural history. woolly mammoths weighing 8 tons, cave lions larger than any modern cat, giant bears standing 14 feet tall, saber-toothed cats with 7-inch fangs engineered for killing. Yet these seemingly helpless primates didn't just survive, they conquered. They eliminated 80% of all large mammals on Earth through a combination of intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation that has never been matched in natural history. They transformed themselves from scattered scavengers into the ultimate apex predators, claiming dominance over every ecosystem on the planet. How did they do it? The answer lies not in superior strength or speed, but in uniquely human capabilities that emerged from the crucible of constant mortal danger. Our ancestors developed fire control that extended their dominance into the night hours when giants ruled. They created sophisticated tools that could bring down creatures hundreds of times their size. They mastered cooperative hunting strategies that turned groups of individuals into collective intelligence far exceeding the sum of their parts. But perhaps most importantly, they learned to think strategically across time and space in ways no other species had ever achieved. They could predict animal behavior, manipulate environmental conditions, and coordinate complex operations that unfolded over days, weeks, and even seasons. They weaponized their intelligence, turning mental capabilities into the most powerful hunting technology Earth had ever seen. The transformation wasn't just technological, it was psychological and social. Humans who could successfully hunt saber-toothed cats had conquered their deepest evolutionary fears. Those who could coordinate mammoth hunts had developed social bonds and communication systems that laid the foundation for civilization itself. Groups that could eliminate cave bears from prime territory had demonstrated environmental control that exceeded anything previously seen in natural history. The implications extend far beyond ancient history. The cognitive abilities our ancestors developed while hunting megafauna became the foundation for every human achievement that followed. The strategic thinking required to outmaneuver cave lions enabled the development of complex societies. The cooperative skills learned through mammoth hunting created the social bonds that built civilizations. The environmental manipulation techniques pioneered in pursuit of giants became the basis for agriculture, industry, and technology. Today, as we face our own giants' climate change, environmental destruction, resource depletion, we can draw inspiration from our ancestors' extraordinary achievements. They faced seemingly impossible odds and not only survived, but thrived. They transformed their apparent weaknesses into strengths, their limitations into advantages, their fears into the fuel for unprecedented innovation. The story of how early humans survived the giants isn't just ancient history, it's the origin story of human dominance itself. It explains how a species with no natural weapons became the most dangerous predator on Earth. It reveals how cooperation and intelligence can overcome any physical limitation. Most importantly, it demonstrates that humans at their best are capable of achieving the impossible. Our ancestors didn't just survive their encounter with the prehistoric giants, they used that encounter to become giants themselves. In doing so, they proved that the greatest weapon any species can possess isn't strength or speed or size, but the ability to think, cooperate, and adapt faster than the challenges they face. The age of megafauna is over, but the age of human potential has just begun. What giants will we face next? What impossible challenges will we overcome? What new heights of achievement will we reach? The story of our ancestors suggests there are no limits to what humans can accomplish when we combine intelligence, cooperation, and the courage to face our greatest fears. The hunt continues, but now we are the giants, and the future itself is our prey.